The last bit that I want to highlight about numbers with Python is around type conversion. In other words, changing a variable between an integer and a float, as well as scientific notation and underscores in numbers. So scientific notation, we can type 1.5 e2. That's 1.5 times 10 to the second, which equals 150. If you're familiar with that type of writing, we can do that in Python. We can write the number this way and Python will understand it. We can also write the number, imagine these underscores are commas, in English at least, that we can write that to make it more readable. So 1 million, we can separate the 3 digits like that. And we'll get to those examples, but let's start with converting types between integers and float. So we can use these two methods, int and float, where the value inside the parentheses is our variable or our number. So let's try it out here. Let's say my int is 5, my float is 5.0. Okay, now let's make a new variable, my new int, and let's change our float value into an integer. My new int is float, int of my float. Now, let's break this down. We're running this int method in Python. It's just built into Python, and it knows what to do when we use this. We're putting in my float, which is 5.0. There's a decimal there, so it's a float, and we're casting it, is what this is called, into an integer. My new int. Now let's see the type of my new int. See, it's an int now, so we converted this float into an integer, and we can do the same going the other way from an integer to a float. And we'll let you do that as an exercise on your own, but we would just do this with the float operation, and we'd have my integer, my int in here in the parentheses, and my new float could be a name for our variable. So for scientific notation, now moving on to that, we can type 1.5 e2. That's 1.5 times 10 to the second. So we know that Python understands scientific notation like that. And we can also type 1 underscore 000 underscore 000 for 1 million. So Python also understands that. Now we cannot do 1 comma 000 comma 000. So we cannot represent numbers like this in Python because it does not understand that to be an integer or a float. If I hit enter here, this actually signifies with these parentheses around here that is a tuple, that is, which is a different data type altogether. So if we say my tuple is 1, how we write these values in English is with a comma separating the every third digit. I know some places use a period there, but it's the same idea, right? To separate every 3 digits for readability. So let's see what happens if we view the type of this variable. Oh, there we go. It views it as a tuple, not an integer, not a float. So we just need to make sure that if we want to represent numbers in a readable format like this, we can use underscores, which is kind of neat. We just cannot use commas. And that is what I wanted to share with you in this section. Let's move on to the next.